if they feel that they are not deriving any more value from your product, they are going to churn. The customer knows where they want to get, but the companies kind of don't care, and then they don't show them how to get there. Let's face it, your customers don't want to talk to your customer support people.
It's springtime, folks, and as it often happens, spring means change and new adventures. So I wanted to say goodbye as a co-host of this amazing podcast. It's been a pleasure. So I wanted to thank all of you, our listeners, and all our guests, and you, Anna, as a driver of this project, and you, Michał, as a sponsor, and the person who actually allowed to fueled the first episodes with your network. So yeah, I'm saying goodbye as a co-host, but I'm definitely staying as a lifelong member of the Operation Automation community.
And you're staying as the ever-living voice of our episodes, because this sprint, Irek is still going to be part of the interviews you're going to hear. But I won't be at the studio alone to create some beautiful introductions. I'll be joined by Michał, who's right here with us today. Hi, Michał, and welcome to the team.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for letting me become part of this podcast. I'm really happy to finally participate in this and not sit on the bench anymore. I know you, Anna, reminded me that I was already part of the podcast as a guest earlier in one of the first sprints, but finally I can become part of it. And I know we're all sad to see Irek leave as a co-host, but I'm sure he'll be one of our future guests as well. And I'm really looking forward to the future interviews and speaking to some interesting marketers from around the world.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the brand new sprint of Operation Automation. It's me, Anna, and today I'm joined in the virtual studio by my new co-host, Michał, and our brand new producer, Mate. You're also going to hear a ghost of Irek's voice once we get to the interview itself, so stay tuned for that. And today, to start off the sprint that is dedicated to customers, building meaningful relationships with them, and promoting our marketing products in the best ways possible, we're getting started with the topic of customer journeys. And Michał, since you're much more experienced in marketing than I am, what do you know about those?
Hey, folks. Customer journeys, that's an interesting topic, and I think we hear about them very often, but I do think that marketers quite often either spend too much time on one particular aspect, one particular stage of the customer journey, or they focus on them separately, so they don't actually create a whole journey for the users, or they just don't think about it and they just focus on one aspect. So as a content marketer myself, I know in the past I focused a lot on the things that gave me really good results really quickly, which was the top of the funnel aspect. So getting people onto our page, I was able to optimize the content that we were putting on our blog. And, the more traffic I got, the more sessions I had, the more time people spent on our page, the better results I had to report for my boss. But that doesn't necessarily bring in the business results. And now that I'm looking at different stages of the funnel, trying to actually think of the entire journey, not just getting people onto our website, I focus also on metrics that actually correspond with the business results, and try to actually think about other stuff also that doesn't necessarily bring in people onto our website, but helps existing users actually make use of our product better or get to know our product better. I think there's a lot on the internet about the customer journeys, but we still have to learn quite a bit. And even though I've been here for more than 10 years doing this.
Well, I absolutely agree here. And I also think that no matter how much information there is on the internet or what we learn in school, because I studied marketing, so I studied customer journeys, and I know that there are like 5 stages of what a customer journey is supposed to look like. Unfortunately, the reality shows that those 5 stages might be 2 stages or 10 stages. And it always depends on your specific brand, your specific audience, and how you choose to connect with them. I do think it's very heartbreaking how much any marketing course you'll find online or in the university is going to tell you that it's about connecting with your users. It's about getting to know your audience, and how little time and money marketers actually spend on doing that. We like to think that, we have experience in the field. That's why we probably know what our customers want, or we can talk to the product team and look at some analytics. But as a rule, not enough resources is spent on actually connecting with the audience, running focus groups, running user interviews. And this is essential. And I think this is something the expert will be talking about later is actually touching upon, that in order to get to data, you have to invest, first of all, money, second of all, time, and to actually find out what people want. And I hope one day our marketing environment is going to move from this just being a shiny theory into an actual practical step everybody's taking.
It's true. And I think there's a lot to be done continuously. So I know that some marketing experts say that, when they're hiring new people, they make sure that everyone goes through the customer support team, that they spend 2 weeks there so that they understand their target audience better. They know what tools to develop for them, how to run campaigns for them. But I've been doing account management in our company for almost 2 years. So, I should have some quite comprehensive knowledge about the needs of our customers. I've done many workshops and talked to them. But truthfully, even after our recent user personas research that our UX team has conducted for us, there's still a lot I've learned about our users and their needs. And I think this can be very beneficial for all people if they did this regularly. Talk to their customers, try to understand how they're using their product, what they're using it for, and what it really means to them, not just assume that you know about them.
Exactly, and that's how the customer journey can change depending on the actual needs your actual users have. So hopefully we're gonna get there one day. And not to bore you with our rambling, we've actually asked Emilia Korczynska from Userpilot to share her experience with customer journey as someone who works with a tool that facilitates customers' journeys for brands on a daily basis. I think it was a pretty lovely talk, and it turned out to be very in-depth with lots of number and data-oriented insights. So all of you folks who are interested in combining creativity with data analytics in order to grow your ROIs and CLVs and all the other marketing terms, this is going to be a really interesting episode for you. Stay tuned.
Hi, Emilia.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Eric. Hey, Anna.
Great to have you here, Emilia.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
And for our guests, today we're joined by Emilia Korczynska, I hope I said it right, to speak about all things customers, like how to build good relationships with customers, why it's important, what's the role of user journey in all of this. And I hope it's going to be a very exciting conversation.
So before we start, if you could just briefly introduce yourself, Emilia, just to give an idea of what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Emilia, and I'm heading marketing at Userpilot, which is a product growth platform for SaaS. I've been in SaaS marketing for good 5-6 years, especially B2B SaaS. It's something that I'm super interested in. So it's very meta what I'm doing now, because it's a tool for other SaaS tools that helps them, improve their retention rates, improve their activation rates, all the important customer metrics by building in-app experiences. So it's kind of dream come true, because I can only stay within the zone and never have to leave the SaaS world.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Cool. Amazing.
Cool. And before we move into our professional marketing questions, I have the most important question of them all. What is the one thing in life do you wish you could automate?
One thing in life I wish I could automate: laundry.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually heard there are wardrobes that apparently, fold all the stuff for you. That's kind of
Cool. It usually just lingers somewhere around the chores. So yeah.
Yeah. You can relate, right?
Yeah. Totally. That would be amazing.
Sure. That's a great response. One of our most popular ones. We have this virtual board in our heads where we market laundry is leading for sure.
Yeah.
So Mason, maybe we should address that problem.
This is the research part. So, based on the research, definitely. So we need to automate that.
You think this is a
Gotcha.
podcast about marketing automation, but in fact, we're just gathering customer ideas for future products.
Research. Yeah, next thing I know, there will be GetResponse laundry.
Oh, you could expect something like that. Yeah.
You never know. I think the very good place to get started for some of our listeners who may be just starting with marketing, maybe. Could you please provide us with your take on customer journey? And more importantly, is the way it works in real life kind of matches what we learn about it in school or during different courses? So what's the state of customer journey today?
Yeah, so, well, to be frank, I did not study marketing formally. I didn't go to university to learn about marketing. So I'm not even sure what people learn about customer journey, right? Yeah, obviously I've read a bunch of articles about it. The thing is, customer journey is something that I feel marketers especially do not pay a lot of attention to. We tend to focus on the first step of the customer journey. So acquisition, building awareness among that kind of unaware customer segment. But as soon as someone signs up for a trial or, becomes a customer, we don't care anymore. That is shifting very slowly. So there are more roles appearing in the marketing department that are supposed to handle the rest of the customer journey. So I've heard of lifecycle marketers that are supposed to, address the different stages of the customer journey. There are product growth specialists or growth product managers that handle the later stages of the customer journey and focus on generating more growth from the existing customer base. Then there are product marketing managers who also, are responsible for the trial users, so for the PQL, so people who are, already at this not only solution aware but also product aware stage of their customer journey, but are not user journey, but not customers yet, technically. So yeah, we see the shift, but in my experience working with Userpilot for almost 3 years now, it's really, really slow. So what you hear on social media that, everyone is so into product-led growth, and yes, NRR is the most important metric now, especially in this recession, la-di-da. Yeah, it's kind of what people say on social media, but what I see most companies do is still the opposite, that they're still so fixated on acquisition that they kind of completely miss out paying attention to what their users or customers are doing at later stages and how the company sometimes is failing them, right? Both in terms of customer success and marketing and sales, because I feel like we should keep marketing and selling our products to our customers throughout their customer journey, not only at the very beginning when they're making the decision whether to buy or not.
Mm-hmm, exactly. I mean, I also wanted to even just stop a moment with this term growth, because I'm just fascinated by the whole idea, because for some reason in some companies it's been even the growth team is a different team within the marketing team or apart from marketing team or product team, so it's this concept is amazing that you have a team of people who are focused on growth. So then the question is, okay, so what is the focus of the other folks? Are these opposite to growth or so I'm just thinking about what is your take on that? How do you, when we use this, let's say, jargon, product growth, for example, what do we really mean by that? If you could just explain it briefly.
Yeah, I feel like our domain is so thrown with all these buzzwords, right? So I think growth is one of my favorites because it's so nebulous. Well, it could be everything, right? Same with demand gen. Okay, you're generating demand. So what exactly are you doing? How exactly are you measuring success? That there is more demand in the market? How do you measure demand, right? Well, by brand search is what? So, okay, what is growth or what is product growth? It kind of, I try to define it as, growth, expansion revenue that you're generating from your existing customer base or, existing user base, using your product as, the lever. So instead of, investing more money in acquiring new users, you're looking for ways how you could increase the value for your existing users and customers from your products by either making them more aware of the features that you have and the value they could derive from these features, structuring your pricing and your plans in a way that sort of fosters expansion revenue and is designed for it. So yeah, it's the process of constantly experimenting and looking for ways to milk more money out of your existing user base without having to invest in new acquisition, increasing customer acquisition cost.
I understood everything you said, yet I believe that there are lots of challenges in order to actually, do that. Because even like the whole concept of, I mean, when you were describing this, it means that people need to work together in order to do this. So I have some, I believe that I can imagine a few challenges. But if you could just, from your experience, what are the, let's say, most common challenges on your path to product growth?
Yeah, so like the biggest challenges I feel is that product growth is owned by product managers who are typically so busy working on the core product functionality that they never have the time to work on adoption metrics. Um, and, all these metrics related to user activation, feature adoption, product adoption in general, then expansion revenue, and then ultimately retention, because they're all very connected with retention. Obviously, if you're a new user who just sees your product for the first time, signs up for their trial, doesn't activate, so they don't reach the points where they derive value out of your product, they're not going to upgrade, right? So that's like wasted money on acquisition. And yet, this is a lagging metric because what we tend to measure is like what you can see directly. So the number of trial signups, for instance, not the number of people that then like actually convert it, right? Of course, yeah, we do measure that as well, but we don't kind of connect the dots that, oh yeah, like activation is related to the conversion rate from the trial. So the same applies to the product team, that they typically chase the leading metrics. Metrics related to velocity, so for instance, feature velocity, right? And there's always the pressure from the stakeholders like CEO, senior management, the board, the investors to produce more, to, like work on things that are glamorous and are visible. So more features, catching up with the competitors. If a competitor produces something, then there's like mayhem in the product team because obviously there's the pressure to catch up, regardless of whether it actually fits our positioning, whether our target audience wants this. No, someone has it. So yeah, that's the first obstacle, that they don't really have the time and the focus and the like buy-in from internal stakeholders to work on these lagging metrics related to activation and adoption.
Circling a little bit back to customer experience and what Userpilot does in particular, because from what I understood, you guys mainly focus on in-app experience that people have in this SaaS environment.
Yeah.
So I can more or less understand the customer journey. I'm also one of a few people in marketing who actually studied marketing, so maybe I understand it a little bit farther from reality than it actually is. So in e-commerce, for example, customer journey makes perfect sense to me. Now you are interested in the item, then you learn about the item, eventually you research them, you choose one, you buy it, then you have the post-purchase behavior. But what about applications? How is it different in this digital world?
Yeah, it's kind of different because in e-commerce, you typically don't deal with recurring payments, right? It's mostly a one-off, so the buyers journey is kind of synonymous with the customer's journey, and it's pretty straightforward, right? With SaaS, you have the recurring model, right? So the subscription model. So essentially, it also depends on a lot of factors, right? Like, what is your pricing model? Are you like product led? So you have, for instance, a free trial or a freemium model, or are you purely sales led? So someone needs to, trust your salespeople and do their research before they can actually try the product themselves. Um, there are reasons why you may want to do that still, despite the push for product-led growth, if your product is extremely complicated or requires a lot of technical setup, right, to actually derive value from, then maybe it wouldn't make any sense to offer a free trial, because the customers just wouldn't be able to use it. But essentially, you need to keep selling to your customers throughout their customers' journey. Because if they feel that they are not deriving any more value from your product, they are going to churn. So obviously, there is the issue of stickiness, right? How your product features are able to deliver value to your customers continuously. And some products just inherently by default have that stickiness, right? For instance, I don't know, email marketing tools, right? Or email automation tools. Like, GetResponse. Obviously, you don't just send the emails once, right? If you have customers signing up and they need to, you need to send them transactional emails related to the purchase or related to their subscription, you do that all the time. But then there are other models of tools maybe you just need to generate one report, right? You're doing your keyword research and then you don't really need it anymore. So then you're canceling until you need it again. So there are like the different challenges that an application may have. But there are so many variables, as I said, that it's hard to say like, oh, here's a bucket list of challenges you will face in a SaaS business.
What I kind of hear out of it is that the pressure on the brands to invest in user retention and engagement is much higher in the SaaS digital environment than it would be on a typical e-commerce or even IRL store. So we know that it's crucial to know your customer. If you build a business strategy, it's probably even more crucial if your strategy is so user-oriented, if it's about their journey, their experience. So what could you maybe share some of your favorite practices for user engagement, retention, attraction, whatever?
So that's another super complex question, right? Like, obviously, we discussed why SaaS companies want to focus on retention, because the majority of the revenue from a SaaS customer happens after they have bought, the product, the application for the first time. So the recurring payments are what we are really after, and we ideally want to improve the LTV, so the lifetime value to CAC, which is customer acquisition cost ratio, right? So the lifetime value in the SaaS world should be 4 times as long as, or as large, right? In terms of, because it's expressed in dollars, obviously, than the customer acquisition costs. So that's why retention is super, super important. How to retain more customers. So, we need to reverse engineer retention for our business. Like, what are the drivers of retention? What are the drivers of value across the customer journey between different customer segments? Because typically, unless your SaaS application is a one-trick pony that just literally does one thing for one person, one persona, and there are applications like that, right? But when we think of more complex applications like GetResponse or Userpilot or HubSpot, right? Anything that we would probably call a platform, right? That consists of different smaller products talking to each other. Then we may have completely different use cases and very different personas. So the first thing is to segment your customers well, right? So have understanding of the different personas and the different customer journeys, right? Plural, that they are taking. And what are the milestones on these journeys? What are the key activation points that need to happen for them to unlock value, right? And these points are critical, right? Because this is where your customer essentially gets the value from your product and feels like, oh, I need to keep paying for that, right? So the goal of Userpilot is to help SaaS product managers, product marketing managers to push more people to hit these value driving points, so to hit these activation points across their user journey. So it's not just new user onboarding, but at later stages you want to push your customers to explore, say, premium features that they could pay more for.
This sounds like it is actually a very useful tool or framework for a business strategy, because so far you've said that it is so important actually to know who your customers are, to distinguish between the key personas, right? Then actually you have perhaps like a different customer journey for each persona. So how actually can you help these teams communicate better in order to understand the key information better? You know what I mean? Like, just how can you actually help those businesses operate in such a complexity?
Yeah, I think like we haven't solved that problem yet. I'm not saying we as a company, as a Userpilot. I think we as the industry in general, because I see so few companies that do this whole thing, like continuous onboarding, right, or pushing the customers to adopt more of the product features throughout their customer journey. I see so few of these companies that are doing this that I struggle to come up with positive examples, right? But yeah, I think the problem lies in good analytics and democratizing product analytics and making them available across the different departments. Also making sure your data sources are all connected to a single, source of truth, and that you can understand. So say the marketing team that is focused on acquisition and is running different campaigns, that they also have the awareness of how leads from these campaigns translate into customers and whether they are good customers or bad customers. Like, how are the leads from the different segments or different personas behaving inside the product? What does that mean, right, for the company at later stages of the customer journey? So yeah, everyone should have access to these analytics, from the marketing team through sales, through customer success, through the product team. But so far, I feel most of the product analytics tools are very complicated. And yeah, I don't know a marketer that is using product analytics tools. So like Amplitude or Mixpanel, because they are so complex. So they're mostly used only by the product team. And so we kind of work in silos. And we're kind of trying to solve that problem. First, we did that internally for ourselves. So we started creating these feature tags, basically, where we can tag UI elements, by the CSS selectors, right, on the front end, and then track how the users engage with them. So whether they click on certain things, right, whether they hover over or fill in certain forms, and then by the different user segments. So say persona 1, persona 2, persona 3, right? Like the basic plan, the professional plan, the enterprise plan, right? How these different user personas across different plans and segments interact with the different features across the user journey, right? And we basically created these heat maps where we see, okay, like these are the features that this segment engages with, like at the different levels. So these are the most popular features for this segment, and these are the least popular features for this segment, right? And the other way around. So now as a marketer, when I look at these heat maps and I know, okay, these are the most important features for like this and that user, right? Then I can emphasize that, for instance, in the content plan, by creating more content around these features addressing this persona. So yeah, that gives me that kind of awareness. But maybe it's a false positive, and maybe that just means, and this is something that a product marketer or a product manager should analyze, maybe the fact that certain features are overused and certain are underused means that we need to improve our onboarding, right? And that we need to push more users in this segment to actually use some of these value driving features more. So yeah, it's a very, very complicated issue that spans over so many different departments and people in the company.
I guess that it's definitely worth it, because with this data, as you said, only a few marketers use product marketing data or product data. But I think that we still try to figure out how to use data properly. So we've already talked about growth. Another one of my favorite keywords in marketing is being data oriented, data driven, sometimes even. So actually, I believe that we all have something different in mind when we think about being data driven, for example. So what is your, let's say, definition of being like a data driven person when we think about this sort of product growth?
Yeah, I think as a marketer, it's important to be data driven, but like some people use the term data obsessed. I think that's not good. If you're obsessed with something, then it's time
This
to
is
check yourself.
It almost sounds that you are okay, you are data driven, but also emotionally unstable. So it's
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I have seen teams that are maybe a bit too much on the data obsessed spectrum. I think it's important to be performance oriented, right? And especially in a market situation where the budgets are, becoming scarce. We need to make sure we use the budgets in the most efficient way, right? So efficient leading to certain business outcomes. Knowing which channels contribute to these business outcomes most, or which activities result in positive business outcomes. So I would say more trial to paid conversions, right? More trial signups, etc., depending on what the goals are, is important. But then when you know the channel, like for instance, for us, it's always been content. So we invest very heavily in SEO content. Organic channel has been like the biggest acquisition and the most reliable acquisition channel for us. We know that, and we already know which types of content drive most conversions for us. But at this point, I don't think it makes sense to obsess about the exact, numbers that every single piece of content produces, and try to hyper optimize everything, because you need to balance, right, actually acting and analyzing, right? Few teams have the resources at their disposal to have a data analyst who would be doing just that, and it is a full-time job.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sure. And I mean, I think it's also very important to mention here that the user, at least I'm a big proponent of saying that the user should be at the center of all of this. So the user should always remain, or customer should always remain at the center of your business strategy, because that's who you create the business strategy for at the end of the day. That's how you define the channels that you're going to distribute the strategy across. So how do you think platforms such as Userpilot help brands connect with their audience, learn more about their audience, and consequently grow in revenue?
Yeah. So platforms like Userpilot just make it easier to communicate with their users, in their natural environment, right? So at large, inside the application when they are actually using the tool in real time. And at the same time, they help analyze their behavior, analyze their habits, see roadblocks in a lot easier way, because, our philosophy, and I think the whole segments, kind of the whole tool categories philosophy, is increasingly to equip non-technical team members like product managers, product marketing managers, marketers, salespeople with no-code tools that allow them to achieve better understanding of user behavior in app and react to it at a relevant time. So, in real time, ideally. So that's kind of the ideal future, right? Where everyone, be it from customer success or customer support, can easily access user behavior data, can easily see how users are behaving differently between different segments, and draw some conclusions from this, insights easily as well, and then react to that. So maybe they see that a certain customer segment is struggling with something. So say a customer success manager can then invite them to a personalized session focusing on this specific problem, right? Or, a product manager can see that some feature is not used at all, it's just cluttering the UI, and maybe people just don't want it, then they may make the decision to sunset it, right? But before it happens, they can inform the users directly in app, or maybe even run a micro survey, like, hey guys, I see you're not using this feature. Shall we just call it quits, right? Collecting feedback from users in real time while they are using something is also super important. Because otherwise, if you send someone a survey via email, 10 days later, they just won't remember. They won't remember how they felt when they used this new feature. So essentially, these tools equip people across the board in different roles in the company to, have these insights and the ability to communicate with users.
There's one thing you said, and that's something that I'm also fully behind of, that it's very important to get all those departments to cooperate. There is this popular jargon in marketing, which is alignment, which I personally can't stand at this point. But at the end of the day, it's very important for the departments to be aligned. And if there is a tool that facilitates that, especially in many larger organizations where even the marketing department can be just scattered across different responsibilities, where product is separated from digital, let's say. So that's great that there is a way to work in the direction. I'm really trying to choose the right words here, not to imply anything too much. So if there is a way to work in the good direction towards getting on the same page across as many different teams in the company as possible, to me, it's always a good thing.
Yeah. Although there's the obvious challenge that everyone has their own area of competence and everyone is always too busy, right? So kind of making sure everyone is on the same page. I think that's also the task of a good leadership, right? Making sure we create sort of the planes within the company for people to have a dialogue and to cooperate.
How do you think automation helps improve user experience? Also, in your case, as a representative from Userpilot, but also to Userpilot's clients, for example.
Oh, that's my favorite question.
Great.
Do you have 5 hours? I can
We
rant
do.
about it.
We do.
We have the floor is yours.
Yeah, I can rant about it forever, actually, as a user first, rather than someone from Userpilot. Although, obviously, having, a few years of experience working on the kind of cross-sectional, like UX, product management, product marketing end of things and seeing how things are done, I have a lot of bias, right? So I just then go out in the world and I don't know, I stub my toe on the chair and then I scream back to UX, right? Almost. So obviously using a lot of tools as a marketer, I see the issues in these tools. And my favorite email that I send customer success managers after these maybe not so positive interactions with customer success or customer support is, this email could have been a tooltip, right? And I just have a swipe file of examples like that, where literally sometimes days of bottlenecks that were blocking us from doing something because an integration wasn't working, right? Or just something wasn't working. And I'm bringing in, a team of 6 on a call with customer success so they can all show us how to do something. And it turns out the issue was so simple and that could have been resolved with automation. And I'm just like, why, guys? right? It's actually so important for us that we've been running a little like meta study recently on the costs of the alternative cost of this email could have been a tooltip, right? So we dug up some data from, I think it was Zoho, that studied the average costs of resolving a customer support ticket. And it ranged from $22 for like the most basic level ticket on a live chat or something, when like there is a one-touch resolution, to over $1,000, depending on the escalation level, right? Because obviously, your help desk costs you a lot of money. Your customer support people cost you a lot of money. Their salaries, the offices, everything else. So when you calculate all the overheads of running your support operation and divide it by the number of tickets you're getting, right? You can easily calculate the costs. So we looked at that, and then we actually asked companies, customer support people from companies, like what questions do they typically answer? And we found like, I think it was 83% at this point of questions are how to use this feature. Right. And a lot of them repeat. Yeah. So then you think like, oh, wow, if you could automate this answer, right, by providing a reactive in-app experience. So when a user hits a certain roadblock, and they don't know how to use this feature, you see, and you can see in inverted commas because you're just tracking in-app events. You see that the user is not doing something they are supposed to be doing, or that they're like rage clicking on something. Then you can just unfurl this little tooltip with a helpful information or point to the right element on the UI that is the next step. But for that, you of course need to know the user's journey. Right? And you need to study that. And then you need to have that person in the product team that is not going to be in the build trap, like working on new features, but they're going to actually act on these roadblocks that they discover on the user journey and plan these reactive tooltips. But we're all kind of lazy and we're like, oh, okay, we're just going to dump support people on this. Let them deal with this problem. And these poor people are literally day after day after day answering the same, questions. It could be automated. So yeah, I feel very strongly about it. I have a lot of personal examples, as I said, where literally, I don't know, like a HubSpot integration Apollo. We mapped 2 fields and the required minimum was to map 4 fields. Such a stupid thing, right? They could have just like pinged out the tooltip, like, oh, you need to map 2 extra fields. We exchanged 7 emails. We had a call with our account executive. She didn't know. She had to ask her product manager. He sent us a 7-minute video, right? How to do that. And, the whole team was waiting for this, right? It's insane.
Sounds like a dream.
Or a nightmare, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this is great because obviously you said about the complexity and you've mentioned this build trap. So sometimes you focus on building a feature or a tool. So you have this idea that you create the journey because you have certain use cases that you have discussed and accepted. So you have this feeling that, okay, I will create exactly the track for the customers. But here, as you said, it's also something that you need to discover. So it's like, at the same time, you should like build the road and discover the journey, like how people actually, use it. So I believe that this is another challenge. Do you think that products like Userpilot, does it help people to actually, validate and actually make sure that they can not only build the product, but also like discover and follow the journey and just like make amendments and then, refine the process?
Yeah, I think it does. So we're increasingly focusing on providing like easy analytics, right? So the kind of analytics that you can set up yourself without coding, without needing to go to your developers, like for instance, with these feature tags that I mentioned, and then you can just track the user paths and how they engage with these different features. You can, create funnels and then see where your users are dropping out of these funnels. So these are like the paths, the ideal paths that you think the users should take. And you just investigate at which point in the funnel they are dropping off and what can be added there to help them stay on track. Because what currently companies are doing, especially complex tools, is that there's like a huge forest, right, with many different paths leading to, say, different villages at the other end of the forest. And the companies are just kind of dropping the customers off at the beginning, like where they have 10 different paths to take. And the customer knows where they want to get, but the companies kind of don't care and they don't show them how to get there. So yeah, I think like having the proper tools to track like where the customers are going, which journey they have taken, are they on the right journey to their desired outcome, so to their destination that they wanted to reach, and correcting course with them, with ideally more automation than not, because let's face it, your customers don't want to talk to your customer support people or customer success. I have a remote team. I have like one person in the US, one person in Armenia, right? And there's a good 12 hours of time difference between them. It's a problem for me if I need to get them both on a call so some customer success agent can explain to us how to use this integration, right? And not everything can be resolved with good UX. This is another like argument or excuse that I hear a lot. Oh no, we don't need any onboarding or any in-app experiences. We're just gonna work on the perfect UX. And I'm like, okay, but how are you gonna handle the backend stuff that's going on behind the scenes with UX?
I mean, like, even a thing as a perfect UX, I think it's very subjective at the end of the day, because I know so many examples of the apps that think they're so smart and that it makes perfect sense that the button in the center of the screen means start. And then there are 10 times more people who have no idea what's going on and what's expected of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you mentioned like if your goal is to have great UX, it's somehow like similar goal is to have a great life. It sounds amazing, right? It's sure, like
right.
let's do it. Like we all want to have like a great life.
Great life.
It's actually quite difficult to figure it out precisely.
Kind of wanted to touch upon what you said, that great UX is also very subjective, and that even if there is like a huge button that the product manager thought this is going to be obvious, right, it might not be obvious for your users. And I actually been studying recently like the cognitive load theory and how that corresponds to product adoption, that you need to also factor in the level of competence and like how technologically savvy your users from different segments are. That for some people, your tool may be totally intuitive and obvious because they have used 10 other tools like that, but another person may be just taking their first step in this tool category and they need a lot more hand-holding. So actually asking your users for their level of competence and then trying to understand the different levels of cognitive load depending on the user's competence is super important. And also remembering that people don't read. So whatever you write in your micro copy. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a content writer here, so you just hit the spot. What is your opinion on surveys? Because I think the best way to find out where your user at, how they feel about your offer and your product, is to ask them directly. But maybe there are better ways.
I like surveys. I think that is what you said is true. The problem is that we like building surveys, but people don't like answering surveys. So you may struggle with collecting enough information. So I think that the solution, the trade-off, is to break your surveys down and make them like really, really tiny and digestible. So instead of asking your user a long list of questions, when they're signing up and having a huge drop-off on your sign-up flow, like break that onboarding survey down into, say, 5-7 micro surveys that are going to be asking these questions, like say after every milestone that the new user reaches. In a contextual way, you can also gamify it. So maybe, like say, answer these 5 questions to get, 5% off, right? At the end of your trial. And yeah, that way you can collect information about your users that will allow you to customize their experience for their user journey and for their level of competence. For instance, their role, their job to be done, but at the same time, you don't overwhelm them so they don't start dropping off.
So what are some of the other ways, effective ways that can help you gather that valuable customer information other than tracking?
Yeah, so surveys and tracking are two different ways, right? Customer interviews are also very valuable. They are even harder to get because obviously this is a bigger time commitment. But back to surveys and tracking, like I think a lot of companies make the mistake of asking questions they could very easily track, right? So instead of putting these questions in a survey, you can, for instance, tag certain elements or enrich data using like enrichment tools. So you don't have to ask people like information that is going to just annoy them, like for instance, your company size, right? Yeah, it might be relevant for you as your company, right? Because then you may know, okay, so if this company has a large product team, right, we're gonna like ask this person to invite their team members because a multiplayer product is inherently more sticky. So we're gonna make sure they collaborate within this tool. But you don't really need to explicitly ask that. Can enrich that. So data enrichment is another way how you can gather information other than surveys, tracking, and interviews.
Great. I mean, I've abandoned so many surveys and so many forms that wanted to know the company size particularly. I also usually give up at the level of enter your work email and just like, no.
Recently, I was asked to, it was just this regular, like, some product survey, but they said explicitly that if I take part in a survey, they will donate, I don't remember exactly, either $5 or $10 to a fund of some sort, like foundation.
That's
So
cool.
then I thought, okay, let's do this. So now, suddenly I have time. So that's a good one. If you had like a tip, what tip would you share with business owners? What can you do in order to make sure that your team collaborates together on the right things instead of trying to come up with basically just fight off the cognitive load?
Oh gosh, this is a bit like the question, how do you live a good life, right?
Yeah, I know. But just
I don't know, I've been like painting this bleak picture, like, oh, nobody's following good practices and there's still so much to do.
Where do we start? Maybe, what is what should we start with based on your experience? Because I believe that you've been working with several companies and you've seen companies that fail miserably and some companies that fail moderately well, so
So pessimistic. Not a single one succeeded ever.
Maybe there are some successes. But I believe that you might have maybe a good starting point, because I believe that the road is challenging and long. But where do we start?
Yeah, I have a good one. The best piece of advice I could give on this is to reduce the number of things you're doing and massively reduce the number of projects that your company is doing. Even if you have big, resources, I think the biggest problem that I see there is holding companies back from actually executing a good product adoption strategy, for instance, to make sure like people are not falling through the cracks and that they are retaining their valuable customers, is that they are spreading themselves so thinly. They do a lot of initiatives despite claiming to be data driven that I'm personally surprised by, because they are so expensive and their return on investment is so low. So maybe instead of doing all the things and building all the things, right, go back to the drawing board, focus on first principles and what is that is really important, and give yourself a year to master this, right? Step by step by step. We've fallen into this trap with our marketing as well. And initially, when we were still a small startup and we were doing so many different things in marketing and throwing spaghetti to the wall and running webinars and, partnerships, link building, content, everything, with a very small team. And we didn't really get amazing results anywhere because of that. And then we decided to change the strategy completely and focus on the one thing that stood out. Like, even though we've been spraying ourselves to thin, it already like stood out. So that was the winner. And we focused on content, we focused on the organic channel, and it really paid off. So like following that, you can just like choose one particular objective, one particular metric to focus on and improve, like say per quarter or per year, and do just that until you've done it, and only then move to the next thing.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed this conversation that we had with Emilia from Userpilot. I'm sure I'm impressed with her wisdom, her tips, and the ideas that she shared with us. I've been following her on LinkedIn for quite a few years, and now I can definitely say that she has a lot to share with us. We've learned quite a few things about user journeys, what are some challenges with developing them, and how marketers sometimes get it wrong. We talked about some buzzwords that go around in marketing, which aren't necessarily helping our users, but we also focus on how we can actually use the data to turn those insights into meaningful campaigns. And I know that Emilia has shared quite a bit of ideas with us, but also Userpilot, the tool that Emilia is representing, is super helpful for marketers that want to build user journeys for customers that have already signed up for the platform. Ourselves, as a SaaS tool, we also use a tool like this. So we do help to navigate our users through the platform, and Userpilot can definitely help you with that. And it can provide you with a lot of insights into what people are struggling with, how can you help them streamline this journey to point them to the right direction, to the right place in your platform, so that they can benefit the most out of it, and also so that you know where there's potential friction and which areas, for example, can help you improve or maybe tweak a bit, so that people will benefit from most from it, and you will know where to prioritize your campaigns on, and also where to allocate your resources on. So I definitely recommend everyone to check out this episode and future episodes as well, but as well Emilia's LinkedIn and Userpilot's website, because I know there will be plenty of other things that you can learn from in the future.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Really enjoyed our conversation. I hope it was interesting for you, Michal, since you weren't actually there for the interview. So I hope listening to it was fun, just as it was for our listeners. And yeah, absolutely. Feel free to join and connect with Emilia on LinkedIn, as well as Michal and myself. Michal is very active on his social networks. You might learn a lot about the magic of email marketing. And if you're thirsty for some more Operation Automation episodes, you know where to find us, that being Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. And for our most dedicated listeners who reached up until this part, don't forget we have our 15% off discount code for any GetResponse plan. The promo code being GR-podcast. You can enter it and claim your discount right away. We're going to be back with you very soon, so stay tuned for more episodes on the most important topic for any marketer. And reminding you once again, that's about building meaningful relationships with your customers and your partners. Have a great week ahead and stay tuned for more.
Take care, everyone.
Operation Automation is backed up by GetResponse, the marketing automation platform that's been on the market for over 20 years. Subscribe for more juicy insights. And remember, automate, don't complicate.